More than 2 decades after his death, Charles Bronson remains one of Hollywood's most mysterious legends. Known for his tough image, quiet personality, and unforgettable screen presence, he built a career that few actors could match. Yet rumors about his private life never disappeared. For years, fans, journalists, and former colleagues debated what was true and what was not. Now, unexpected comments from his daughter have brought old questions back into the spotlight. But what exactly has she revealed? Long before Charles Bronson became one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood, his life looked nothing like the glamorous world he would later enter. He was born Charles Dennis Buczynski on November 3, 1921, in Ehrenfeld, Pennsylvania. It was a small coal mining town where survival depended on hard work. His parents were immigrants, and the family struggled financially from the beginning. Money was scarce. Opportunities were limited. Every day was focused on getting through the next. Bronson was one of 15 children. In such a large family, there was little room for comfort. The household often faced serious financial hardship. Food had to be shared carefully. New clothes were rare. Every family member learned the value of sacrifice at an early age. The coal mines dominated life in the region. They provided jobs, but they also brought danger. For many families, mining was not a choice. It was simply the only path available. As a young boy, Bronson watched his father leave for work in the mines. The job was exhausting and dangerous. Then tragedy struck. When his father died, the family's situation became even more difficult. Still a teenager, Bronson stepped into the same harsh world. He went to work in the coal mines himself. Deep underground, surrounded by darkness and dust, he spent long hours performing physically demanding labor. It was difficult work that tested both strength and endurance. The experience left a lasting mark on him. Years later, audiences would see Bronson as a tough and fearless screen presence. Much of that image came naturally. He had lived through hardship long before he ever stood in front of a camera. The mines taught him discipline. They taught him resilience. Most importantly, they taught him how to endure difficult situations without complaint. As the years passed, the world was changing rapidly. The Second World War had begun, and millions of young men were entering military service. Bronson joined the United States Army Air Forces during the war. For the first time in his life, he was exposed to a world beyond the mining towns of Pennsylvania. Military service opened new possibilities and introduced him to people from different backgrounds. He served as an aerial gunner and flew combat missions during the conflict. The dangers were real. Every mission carried risks. Yet the experience helped build confidence and maturity. For a young man who had spent much of his life fighting poverty, the military represented a turning point. It also gave him something he had rarely experienced before: a glimpse of opportunity. When the war ended, Bronson returned home, but he was no longer the same person who had left. Like many veterans, he faced questions about what came next. The coal mines still existed. The old life was still there. But Bronson wanted something different. Using benefits available to veterans, he began studying art. This unexpected decision would slowly guide him toward a completely new future. While exploring creative interests, he became involved in theater and acting. At first, acting was not a clear career plan. It was simply an opportunity to try something new. Yet the stage revealed something important. Bronson possessed a natural presence. He was not the most talkative performer. He did not rely on grand speeches or dramatic gestures. Instead, he had a quiet intensity that attracted attention. People noticed him. Soon, he began pursuing acting more seriously. The journey, however, was far from easy. Hollywood in the late 1940s and early 1950s was highly competitive. Thousands of hopeful actors arrived every year searching for success. Most never found it. Bronson entered that world with no famous family connections, no powerful agents, and no guaranteed opportunities. He started at the bottom. Small television appearances became his training ground. He accepted minor parts wherever he could find them. Sometimes he appeared only briefly on screen. In many productions, audiences barely noticed him. But casting directors did. There was something different about Bronson. His rugged face, piercing eyes, and quiet confidence made him stand out from many of the polished stars of the era. He looked authentic. That authenticity became one of his greatest strengths. During the 1950s, he slowly built a reputation as a dependable character actor. He appeared in television series and films, gaining valuable experience with every role. Success did not arrive overnight. Years passed before major opportunities began to appear. Unlike many Hollywood stories filled with sudden breakthroughs, Bronson's rise was gradual. Every step had to be earned. As the audience watched his career develop, one thing became increasingly clear. He understood hard work. The lessons learned in Pennsylvania's coal mines had never left him. Directors appreciated his professionalism. Fellow actors respected his commitment. Producers knew they could depend on him. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, Bronson was appearing in larger productions. Films such as The Magnificent Seven introduced him to wider audiences. His performances carried a unique energy. He rarely needed long speeches to leave an impression. A simple look could communicate strength, determination, or danger. That ability made him unforgettable. As his popularity grew, international audiences began embracing him as well. In Europe especially, Bronson's image resonated strongly with moviegoers. He represented a different kind of leading man, one shaped by real struggles rather than Hollywood glamour. The tough characters he portrayed felt believable because much of that toughness had been earned through experience. Slowly but surely, Charles Bronson was moving toward stardom. The poor boy from a Pennsylvania mining town was becoming one of the most recognizable actors in the world. Yet success often brings new challenges. As fame grew, public curiosity grew with it. Fans wanted to know more about the man behind the screen. Journalists searched for stories. Rumors began circulating. Questions about his private life started attracting attention. The next phase of his journey would bring extraordinary success, but it would also place him under a spotlight that never truly disappeared. But fame would soon bring attention not only to his career, but also to secrets hidden behind closed doors. By the 1960s, Charles Bronson was no longer simply a hardworking character actor fighting for recognition. He was becoming a star. Audiences around the world recognized his face. His rugged appearance, quiet confidence, and powerful screen presence made him different from many of Hollywood's traditional leading men. While other actors relied on charm or flashy performances, Bronson often said very little. Yet somehow, he commanded attention every time he appeared on screen. As movie theaters filled and his popularity grew, a fascinating contrast began to emerge. The characters audiences watched on screen seemed fearless. The man behind those characters remained a mystery. Bronson was known for protecting his privacy. Unlike many celebrities who enjoyed public attention, he rarely revealed personal details. Interviews were often short. Public appearances were carefully managed. He preferred spending time with family rather than chasing publicity. This silence only increased public curiosity. The less he revealed, the more people wanted to know. During this period, his career continued climbing steadily upward. Films like The Magnificent Seven and The Great Escape introduced him to larger audiences, but it was in Europe where Bronson became a true sensation. French audiences especially admired him. To many European moviegoers, Bronson represented strength, determination, and authenticity. He looked like a man who had experienced real hardship, not someone manufactured by Hollywood. As his international fame expanded, producers began building films around him. He was no longer supporting other stars. He had become the attraction. By the early 1970s, Bronson was among the highest-paid actors in the world. His success story was remarkable. The son of poor immigrants who once worked deep underground in Pennsylvania coal mines was now earning millions of dollars and starring in major motion pictures across the globe. Yet even as his professional life flourished, his personal life attracted increasing attention. One of the most important relationships in his life was with actress and singer Jill Ireland. Their relationship became one of Hollywood's most talked-about romances. The couple first met while working in the film industry. At the time, circumstances surrounding their relationship attracted significant media attention. Eventually, they married and built a life together. To the public, They appeared deeply devoted to one another. They often worked together on films and were frequently photographed side by side. Fans admired their connection, and many viewed them as one of Hollywood's strongest couples. But life behind the cameras was rarely as simple as magazine headlines suggested. Like any family, they faced challenges. Fame created pressures that few people could fully understand. Long filming schedules meant time apart. Constant media attention brought unwanted scrutiny. Every public appearance generated new stories and speculation. Despite this, Bronson continued presenting a calm and controlled image. Friends and colleagues often described him as reserved. He was known for being polite but cautious. Trust did not come easily. Years of struggle had taught him to guard his private life carefully. Some who worked with him remembered a generous and loyal man. Others described someone intensely protective of his family and personal space. Both descriptions could be true. The public, however, rarely saw these sides of him. Instead, they saw the action hero. As the 1970s progressed, Bronson reached another level of fame through films like Death Wish. The movie became a major success and transformed him into one of the defining action stars of the decade. Audiences packed theaters. His image became instantly recognizable. The character of Paul Kersey, a man seeking justice after personal tragedy, connected strongly with moviegoers. Whether critics praised or criticized the film, there was no denying its impact. Bronson's status as a cultural icon was secured. Yet greater fame brought greater attention. Journalists became increasingly interested in learning about the real man behind the legend. Stories began appearing in newspapers and magazines. Some portrayed Bronson as a humble family man who never forgot his working-class roots. Others suggested he was far more complex than his public image indicated. Rumors followed him throughout much of his career. Some focused on his personality. Others centered on relationships, business decisions, or his life away from Hollywood. Most of these stories remained difficult to verify. Bronson rarely responded. His silence often allowed speculation to grow. In many ways, mystery became part of his public identity. Unlike modern celebrities who share every detail online, Bronson belonged to a different era. He understood that privacy could be valuable. He believed certain parts of life should remain personal, but that choice came with consequences. Every unanswered question created room for assumptions. Every rumor generated more curiosity. As the years passed, the gap between Charles Bronson the actor and Charles Bronson the person seemed to grow larger. Fans knew the fearless characters. Few truly knew the man. Even those closest to him rarely spoke publicly about private matters. As audiences continued watching his films and celebrating his achievements, whispers about his personal life refused to disappear. Some stories faded quickly. Others survived for years. A few would continue long after his death. Those lingering questions slowly became part of his legacy. And while Bronson remained focused on his work and family, time was moving forward. New challenges were approaching, and they would test the strength of the man who had spent a lifetime overcoming obstacles. Yet the most persistent rumors would not fully emerge until the final years of his life. For much of his career, Charles Bronson seemed almost unstoppable. He had survived poverty, war, and decades of struggle in Hollywood. He had become one of the most successful actors in the world and built a reputation as one of cinema's toughest leading men. But time eventually reaches everyone. By the 1980s, Bronson was entering a different stage of life. Although he remained active in film, the industry around him was changing. A new generation of action stars was emerging. Audiences were becoming familiar with different faces, different styles, and different stories. Yet Bronson still commanded respect. His name alone could attract attention. Fans who had followed him for years continued supporting his work, and producers still saw value in his remarkable screen presence. However, behind the scenes, life was becoming more complicated. One of the most painful chapters began with the health struggles of his beloved wife, Jill Ireland. In 1984, Ireland was diagnosed with breast cancer. The diagnosis changed everything. For years, the couple had appeared inseparable. They had built a life together, worked together, and raised a family. Now they faced a battle far more serious than anything depicted in a movie script. Bronson devoted himself to supporting her. As Ireland underwent treatment, he remained by her side. Friends and family members later described his dedication during this difficult period. The tough movie star that audiences admired revealed another side of himself, one marked by loyalty, compassion, and commitment. Despite periods of hope, the illness continued to affect Ireland's health. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, the family faced tremendous emotional challenges. Then, in May 1990, tragedy struck. Jill Ireland passed away at the age of 54. For Bronson, the loss was devastating. Those who knew him said he was deeply affected. The woman who had shared so much of his journey was gone. Although he continued appearing in projects after her death, many observers noticed changes. The energetic actor who once dominated movie screens seemed increasingly withdrawn. Public appearances became less frequent. Interviews became even rarer. The private man who had always valued personal space retreated further from public view. At the same time, questions began to grow. Fans noticed his absence. Journalists wondered why he appeared less often. Entertainment publications started publishing stories attempting to explain what was happening. Some reports focused on grief. Others pointed toward age and declining health. As fewer reliable updates became available, speculation filled the gaps. This was not unusual for a celebrity of Bronson's stature. Throughout entertainment history, mystery often grows when public figures disappear from view. The less information available, the more rumors emerge. Bronson became a perfect example. By the mid-1990s, reports about his health began appearing more frequently. Various publications suggested he was facing medical challenges. Some stories were accurate. Others were exaggerated. The problem was simple. Bronson rarely addressed them. His commitment to privacy remained unchanged. He did not hold press conferences. He did not release lengthy statements. He did not spend time correcting every rumor. As a result, stories continued spreading. Some claimed his condition was worse than reported. Others suggested he was struggling with issues that had never been publicly confirmed. Without direct responses, separating fact from fiction became increasingly difficult. Meanwhile, his film career gradually slowed. The actor who once appeared regularly on movie posters was stepping away from the spotlight. For longtime fans, the change was difficult to watch. Many remembered the powerful screen presence of Death Wish, The Great Escape, and countless other films. Seeing their hero grow older reminded audiences that even legends are human. As the years passed, Bronson spent much of his time away from Hollywood. The cameras were no longer following him. The headlines appeared less often. Yet, public curiosity never disappeared. Then came another turning point. In August 2003, Charles Bronson died at the age of 81. News of his death quickly spread around the world. Tributes poured in from fellow actors, filmmakers, and fans. Television networks revisited his most famous films. Newspapers reflected on his remarkable journey from a Pennsylvania coal mine to international stardom. For many people, the focus returned to his accomplishments, his resilience, his unforgettable performances, his unique place in cinema history. But even as the tributes continued, something else remained. The questions. The rumors that had followed him for years did not disappear when he passed away. In some ways, they grew stronger. Books revisiting his life appeared. Documentaries examined his career. Articles explored stories that had circulated for decades. Online discussions introduced his life to entirely new generations of fans. Some conversations focused on his personality. Others examined family relationships, health struggles, or private matters that had never been fully explained. The lack of definitive answers allowed many theories to survive. Every few years, old rumors resurfaced. New audiences discovered them. Debates continued. People wondered which stories were true and which were merely speculation. And because Charles Bronson had spent much of his life protecting his privacy, many questions remained unresolved. The mystery became part of the legend. For some fans, that mystery only made him more fascinating. For others, it created frustration. They wanted answers. They wanted clarity. Most importantly, they wanted to hear from someone who had known the real Charles Bronson, not the movie star, not the public figure, but the man behind the image. For years, that perspective remained largely out of reach. Then, decades after his death, attention turned towards someone uniquely positioned to address those lingering questions. Someone who had witnessed parts of his life firsthand. Someone whose voice carried a different kind of authority. And when she finally spoke, people listened. For years, the speculation continued, until someone very close to Bronson finally decided to speak. More than 2 decades after Charles Bronson's death, interest in his life remained surprisingly strong. His films continued appearing on television. New audiences discovered his work through streaming services and classic movie collections. Fans who had admired him for decades still discussed his career, his personality, and the many stories that surrounded him. Yet alongside that admiration, the rumors never completely disappeared. Some focused on his private life. Others centered on his health, his relationships, and the way he chose to live away from the spotlight. For years, many of these stories existed in a space between fact and speculation. They were repeated in articles, documentaries, online forums, and fan discussions. Some claims became so common that many people accepted them as truth, even when evidence remained limited. The problem was simple. Charles Bronson was no longer alive to respond. And because he had spent much of his life avoiding public discussions about personal matters, there were still many unanswered questions. That is why public attention shifted when members of his family began speaking more openly about aspects of his life. Among those voices, the perspective of his daughter carried particular importance. Unlike journalists, critics, or distant observers, she had experienced parts of Bronson's life firsthand. She had seen the man behind the movie star image, and that difference mattered. Family members often occupy a unique position when discussing famous figures. They witness moments the public never sees. They understand the private realities that exist behind headlines and publicity photographs. At the same time, they face difficult choices. Every statement can attract media attention. Every comment can generate new interpretations. Even a simple observation can become a major news story. As renewed interest in Charles Bronson's life continued growing, comments connected to his family began attracting significant attention from fans and entertainment media alike. People hoped these insights would finally clarify stories that had circulated for years. Some expected dramatic revelations. Others anticipated long-hidden secrets. But reality is often more complex than rumor. As discussions unfolded, many observers discovered a more human picture of Bronson. Rather than confirming sensational claims, family reflections often highlighted qualities that audiences rarely associated with a tough action star. The public remembered the fearless vigilante from Death Wish. Family members remembered a father. The public saw a Hollywood icon. Family members saw a man navigating everyday life. This contrast became one of the most fascinating aspects of the conversation. Throughout his career, Bronson's image had been built around strength and toughness. He rarely portrayed vulnerable characters. His screen persona projected confidence and control. Yet family stories often revealed quieter moments. Moments of humor. Moments of affection. Moments that rarely appeared in magazines or interviews. These personal recollections helped balance the public narrative. Instead of reinforcing myths, they added depth. Instead of creating a larger-than-life legend, they reminded audiences that Charles Bronson was a human being with the same complexities found in any family. As reports about his daughter's comments spread, reactions varied. Some fans believed long-standing rumors had finally been settled. Others remained unconvinced. Years of speculation had created deeply rooted beliefs, and not everyone interpreted the information in the same way. This is often what happens when public figures become cultural icons. Their stories evolve over time. Facts become mixed with assumptions. Personal memories compete with public narratives. The result is a legacy that can be difficult to untangle. For Charles Bronson, that challenge was especially significant. His commitment to privacy throughout his life meant that many details remained known only to those closest to him. As a result, family perspectives became increasingly valuable. They offered context. They offered balance. Most importantly, they offered a reminder that behind every famous name is a real person. As audiences revisited Bronson's career, many began viewing him differently. The conversation gradually shifted away from rumor and toward understanding. Questions about private matters remained interesting to many fans, but they no longer seemed like the entire story. A broader picture was emerging, one that included his difficult childhood, his military service, his rise through Hollywood, his devotion to family, his personal losses, and the challenges he faced during his final years. The more people learned, the harder it became to reduce his life to a collection of rumors. Instead, they saw a remarkable journey marked by perseverance and resilience. The son of poor immigrants had built an extraordinary career through determination and hard work. That achievement remained undeniable. And as his daughter's perspective entered the public conversation, many fans began focusing less on speculation and more on the man himself. Yet one final question remained. What would history ultimately remember? The rumors that generated headlines? Or the legacy left behind by one of cinema's most unforgettable stars? The answer would shape how future generations viewed Charles Bronson's story. But the true impact of her words would become clear only when Bronson's entire legacy was viewed through a new lens. As the years passed after Charles Bronson's death, something remarkable happened. While many Hollywood stars gradually faded from public memory, Bronson remained relevant. His films continued finding new audiences. Classic movie channels regularly featured his work. Streaming platforms introduced younger viewers to performances that had first captivated audiences decades earlier. Across different generations, people continued discovering the same qualities that had made him famous in the first place. The quiet confidence, the unmistakable screen presence, the feeling that every character he played had lived a real life before the camera ever started rolling. For many actors, success is measured by awards. For Charles Bronson, success was measured differently. It was measured by endurance. His journey from poverty to worldwide fame remained one of Hollywood's most extraordinary stories. Born into hardship, shaped by labor in Pennsylvania coal mines, tested by military service during World War II, and strengthened through years of rejection in the entertainment industry, Bronson built a career through persistence rather than privilege. Nothing was handed to him. Every opportunity had been earned. That reality became one of the reasons audiences respected him so deeply. People saw authenticity in his performances because authenticity existed in his life. Even when playing larger-than-life characters, there was always something believable about him. He understood struggle. He understood sacrifice. He understood what it meant to keep moving forward when success seemed far away. Those experiences became part of every role he played. As historians and film experts examined his career, they often pointed to his unique place in cinema history. Bronson did not fit the traditional Hollywood mold. He lacked the polished elegance associated with many leading men of his era. Instead, he brought something different, something raw, something genuine. That difference helped him stand apart from his peers. It also helped him build a loyal global audience. In Europe, his popularity reached extraordinary levels. In countries like France, he became more than a movie star. He became a cultural icon. Audiences admired his toughness, but they also admired the sense of determination he represented. His story reflected the belief that difficult beginnings do not have to define a person's future. That message resonated across borders and generations. Yet despite his accomplishments, discussions about his life often returned to the same topic. The rumors, the speculation, the mysteries. Even decades after his passing, many conversations continued focusing on unanswered questions. This is not unusual. History is filled with famous figures whose private lives generate almost as much attention as their public achievements. People are naturally curious. They want to know what happened behind closed doors. They want to understand the hidden side of success. In Bronson's case, that curiosity became especially powerful because he revealed so little during his lifetime. His silence created space for interpretation. And where interpretation exists, rumors often follow. But as family members shared their perspectives and as more attention shifted toward the full story of his life, a different understanding began to emerge. The rumors, while interesting to some, represented only a small part of a much larger journey. They did not explain the young miner who worked underground to support his family. They did not explain the soldier who served during wartime. They did not explain the struggling actor who spent years fighting for opportunities. They did not explain the husband who stood beside Jill Ireland during her battle with cancer. Nor did they explain the father remembered by those closest to him. The deeper story was far more meaningful. It was a story of resilience, a story of transformation, a story of perseverance against overwhelming odds. As audiences revisited his life, many began recognizing this broader perspective. The focus shifted from mystery to legacy, from speculation to achievement, from rumors to reality. Charles Bronson's greatest accomplishment was not simply becoming famous. Many people achieve fame. Far fewer build a legacy that survives for generations. His films continue entertaining audiences. His performances continue influencing actors. His life story continues inspiring people facing difficult circumstances. That is the kind of impact that lasts. And perhaps that is why interest in him remains so strong. Not because every question has been answered, but because his journey continues speaking to something universal. The belief that determination can overcome hardship. The belief that humble beginnings do not determine the future. The belief that persistence matters. In the end, the rumors may always